Life had a way of falling into place for me. I was content, settled in a comfortable rhythm, and married to a man I thought I knew. My name is Patricia, and at 37, I had reached a point where things were going as smoothly as I could have hoped. My husband, Mason, and I had been married for several years, and although our lives were far from perfect, they were undeniably steady. I had married into wealth, a truth I didn't shy away from but rarely spoke about. Mason had always found a way to mock the simplicity of my lifestyle, as if our easy days together were somehow beneath him. It had always bothered me, but I had learned to tune it out, to overlook the sharpness in his words. We were sitting in a hotel lobby during a brief getaway, a change of scenery to refresh our routine. I had long ago learned to retreat into myself, finding peace in my own thoughts when Mason's voice started to grate on my nerves. His latest update was an attempt to get under my skin, and I could see it in the way his eyes gleamed with pride. "Hey, guess what? I married up," Mason said, breaking the brief silence between us. He leaned back in his chair, glancing at the drink in his hand as if it were an afterthought. "What do you mean?" I asked, even though I already knew. His grin widened as he looked me over, the same old smug expression I had grown so used to over the years. "I married Diana," he said, "you know, the daughter of the president of Goldsmith Enterprises." At the mention of Goldsmith Enterprises, my mind snapped into focus. I knew that name, but it took me a moment to place it. My family's real estate holdings had dealings with various major corporations, and I recalled hearing about Goldsmith Enterprises in passing. It wasn't just any company, it was a powerhouse. But before I could process the full weight of what he had just said, Mason continued, his voice filled with an unmistakable pride. "Diana's young, beautiful, and loaded. She's everything I was missing with you." I had been married to Mason for almost a decade, and hearing him gloat about his new wife made something inside me twist. I had grown used to his comments over the years, but this felt different. The taunting edge in his voice made my stomach churn, and I could barely stop myself from reacting. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I didn't have to engage. I had long since learned to hold my own in conversations with him, no matter how insufferable they became. Still, a part of me wanted to understand just what he was so proud of. "Who is she, exactly?" I asked, trying to mask my curiosity beneath a calm exterior. "She's my wife," he said again, his tone suggesting that should have been enough. "And guess what? Her family has money, real money. They paid off our mortgage in a heartbeat." His words hung in the air between us, but it was his next comment that truly got under my skin. "And I couldn't have done it without you," he said, sneering. "Thanks for making the divorce so easy, Patricia." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. The divorce had been messy, sure, but I hadn't expected him to bring it up so casually, as if it was a transaction he had completed without any emotional toll. As if reading my thoughts, he added, "Yeah, I'm set for life now, married into money. You keep living in your little world, though, I'm sure you're happy." His laugh, sharp and jarring, echoed in the otherwise quiet lobby, cutting through my attempts to stay centered. Despite the sting of his words, I remained calm. "Goldsmith Enterprises," I repeated, now recognizing the name with full clarity. "I know them. They're the ones with that massive building downtown, right?" Mason's face lit up at the recognition. "Yeah, that's them. Big deal, huh? Their family owns it all. Real estate, luxury brands, you name it." I kept my composure, but inside, I felt a wave of discomfort. "Well, I've been to that building. My family's real estate holdings are involved with them," I said casually. Mason raised an eyebrow, clearly thrown by my nonchalance. "Wait, what? How do you know them?" I leaned forward, taking a sip of my drink to mask the smugness creeping in. "That building you're so proud of? My father bought it a few years ago, paid a hefty price for it too, $500 million, if I remember correctly." His face dropped. "Wait, you're saying?" "Yes," I said, savoring the pause. "That building is part of our portfolio. My father manages it. It's leased out to several tenants, one of which happens to be your company." I could see the gears turning in his mind. He clearly hadn't expected this turn in the conversation. The woman at his side, Diana, eyed me with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "What do you mean, your company?" she asked, her voice thick with disdain. "My father runs a real estate empire. He owns a good portion of the city, including that building," I explained, my tone calm but with a sharp edge beneath. Mason's face twisted with confusion and anger. You're just going to throw that in my face now? I shook my head, my patience thinning. I didn't say anything about throwing anything in anyone's face. You're the one boasting about your new life while I'm just telling the truth. He sneered at me, trying to maintain his bravado. Well, maybe you should have paid more attention before our divorce, should have known who I was marrying next. I'm sure you're very happy with your decision, I said, my voice clipped, and I'm sure your company will be just fine, despite those missed rent payments. The tension in the air thickened, Mason's smugness faltered for a moment, and I could see the uncomfortable silence settle between the three of us. Diana broke it, stepping forward with a haughty laugh. Look, we don't have time for this, Mason, we need to check in. I smiled inwardly, the satisfaction of finally standing up for myself starting to settle in. It wasn't much, just a few words here and there, but it was enough. Mason glanced at me one last time, his face twisted in irritation, before he turned his attention back to his new wife. They walked away, their laughter trailing behind them like a fading echo. I sat there for a moment longer, the weight of the encounter settling on my shoulders. The world outside the hotel lobby felt a little lighter now, a little more distant, but I knew I had to go back to my life, back to the careful balance I had crafted over the years. And yet, something had shifted. I had reached a point in my life where I realized I needed a break, just a moment to myself to regain my peace and perspective. The weight of the daily grind had started to wear on me, and I craved a change of scenery, a place to breathe and reset. After much deliberation, I decided to take a solo trip to the Northeast. There was something calming about its crisp air, something refreshing that seemed to cleanse my weary soul. The scenery was stunning, lush forests, quaint little towns, and streets that smelled of fresh pine and autumn. I was welcomed by friendly faces everywhere I went, locals eager to chat and share stories. Their kindness, so different from the distance I often felt back home, began to mend the emotional exhaustion I had been harboring for too long. In just a few days, I felt a sense of renewal, a peace I hadn't realized I was so desperate for. But as healing as it was, I knew I couldn't stay forever. I booked a stay in Los Angeles at one of the city's most renowned hotels, deciding to indulge in the best experience the city could offer. I'd been working non-stop lately, and I knew I needed a change in pace. After checking in, I let the luxurious ambience of the lobby surround me, sinking into the plush armchair with a welcome drink in hand. The fatigue from my journey melted away with every sip, my body relaxing as the soothing music and soft lighting of the hotel embraced me. For a fleeting moment, I felt like I could truly call this city home. The calm of the space allowed me to drift off into my thoughts, and before I knew it, I half-jokingly remarked to myself, maybe I could move here. It felt good to let my guard down for once. But just as I was savoring the peace, a voice pierced through the calm, jarring me back to reality. It was a voice I hadn't expected to hear, especially not here. Hey, what are you doing here? I turned, startled, to find Mason, my ex-husband, entering the lobby with 2 large suitcases in tow. My heart gave an unexpected leap at the sight of him. This was the last thing I had expected on my little healing journey, the very last person I thought would cross my path. But it wasn't just Mason. He was accompanied by a young woman, someone I didn't recognize at first. She was in her early 20s, with flawless skin, bold makeup that screamed attention, and striking red nails that seemed almost too perfect for the crisp northeastern weather. She was dressed in a short skirt despite the chill in the air, her every movement an exhibition of confidence. Her youth and beauty were glaring in contrast to the serene atmosphere of the hotel lobby. For a moment, my mind couldn't process what I was seeing. Then it hit me. My eyes locked onto Mason and the woman at his side, disbelief washing over me. Why are you here, and who is she? I couldn't help but blurt out, my curiosity overtaking my better judgment. Despite my better instincts to avoid the drama, I found myself asking the question I didn't really want to know the answer to. Mason's smile was wide, his eyes gleaming with a pride I hadn't seen in years. Oh, let me introduce you, he said, his tone filled with an excitement I found unsettling. This is Diana, my new wife. We're on our honeymoon, and guess what? She's the daughter of a very wealthy businessman. The name Diana hit me like a crashing wave. The same Diana, the one I had heard about in the phone call months ago, the one Mason had clearly replaced me with. A feeling of discomfort surged through me, and I suddenly felt like a character in one of those novels I used to devour, a woman watching her past life crumble away, replaced by something new, something younger, and in Mason's mind, better. Diana shot me a glance, her expression tinged with amusement and a hint of judgment. "You're here alone? That's kind of sad," Mason said, his voice dripping with disdain. I took a steadying breath, trying not to let his words rattle me, but then Diana spoke again, her tone sharp and unkind. "Hey, Mason, is this your ex-wife? She looks old. Hurry up with the check-in," she said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. I could feel the weight of her words, but I refused to let them affect me. I forced myself to remain calm, keeping my composure despite the rising tension in the air. I had been through enough to know how to mask my emotions when necessary. Mason, oblivious to the discomfort he was causing, casually draped an arm around Diana as though she were some prized possession. "Yeah, I'm set for life now, married into money," he said, his voice filled with smugness. "You keep struggling in your little modest life." His laughter, high-pitched and grating, echoed through the elegant lobby, ruining the peaceful moment I had just been enjoying. The contrast was jarring. Here I was, freshly arrived in a city I thought would offer me a reprieve, only to be thrown back into the chaos of my past. Mason, as though relishing in my discomfort, continued his boastful tirade. "Diana is Goldsmith's daughter, you know, Goldsmith Enterprises," he added, his tone full of childish glee. The name rang a bell. Goldsmith Enterprises. I had heard of them, but the full weight of the connection didn't strike me until just then. I remembered where I had heard the name. It was from my father's business dealings. "Impressive, huh?" Mason said, almost too proud of himself. "Her family's loaded. They even paid off our house mortgage quickly. Thanks for making the divorce so easy, Patricia," he added, with a mocking smile. The words stung more than I cared to admit. Divorce hadn't been easy for either of us, but his attempt to belittle the entire experience made me bristle. Still, I held my ground. "Yeah, I know them," I replied calmly, trying to match his smugness with my own sense of composure. "They're in that big building downtown, right?" "I've been there." Mason's eyes widened in surprise. "Oh, you've been there?" he asked, clearly caught off guard. "Well, her family owns a huge company. Breaking up with you was the right choice, don't you think?" he added with a malicious smirk. I nodded, still calm, though inwardly I felt a rush of frustration building. "That building?" I said, casually. "It's part of our real estate holdings." There was a pause, a moment where neither Mason nor Diana seemed to understand. "What do you mean, our real estate?" they asked in unison, their voices tinged with confusion. I couldn't help the small smile that crept onto my face. "That building? It's leased by my father for his most prestigious office. I'm not sure if your company has anything to do with real estate, but it's certainly not a shabby building." Their skepticism was evident, but I wasn't finished. "Yes, I know how grand it is. I was there when my father purchased it for about $500 million. He recently mentioned that a tenant was having trouble paying rent. Guess who it was?" I let the words hang in the air, feeling the weight of the revelation settle in between us. Mason's face went pale, his smile faltered, Diana's smug expression wavered just slightly, and I could see the confusion in her eyes. "It was your company," I said quietly, the truth settling into the silence.